It is one of the hottest days of the year in the UK right now. I've had to close my window and my door, and UK houses are built to maintain heat. So when it gets this hot, it feels 10 times worse. It is humid, it's muddy, it's gonna be muddy because I'm in a room and I'm sweating, and that's making the heat of the room worse. And this is the last bit of cool air I'm going to feel for about an hour. So please let me have this. My dedication to my art astounds me. This weekend saw the return of West End Live, a yearly celebration of West End theatre that happens in Trafalgar Square. Tens of thousands of people will go to get to see a bunch of West End musicals perform for free. I want to say, off the bat, this is incredible. This is amazing. But every single year West End happens, I see the exact same things said on Twitter. The exact same moans from people complaining about this and the other. Some things are things that West End Live could maybe actually fix. And there's a lot of things that West End Live, just because of how it's set up, can't. So, I want to explore this. I want to make a video, once and for all, talking about the pros and cons of West End Live, what it does incredibly well, and the areas where it does kind of fall behind, and looking at those and seeing if there are areas within that where they could improve. Even after 20 years, as this year is the 20th anniversary of West End Live, there are areas that West End Live could actually improve, and make this event better for everyone. So, is West End Live broken? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do versus brackets, game shows, rankings, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe, it really helps me, it helps out the channel. But let's dive into West End Live. Now, with everything on my channel, I want to start with the positives. Because I think, on the whole, my opinion on West End Live is positive. I think West End Live is a great event. I do think, as with many things, there are areas where it can improve, and areas where, sadly, just because of how it's set up, it will fall behind slightly. But the idea, and a lot of the execution of West End Live, works. Let's start with number one, and something I think is very obvious. Price. It is not controversial to say that theatre can be expensive. A lot of people will take this in ways and ignore a lot of important context with this, but it is a fact that ticket prices are going up. We are seeing more and more theatres charge very expensive prices for tickets. If you look at box office and you try and buy the most expensive price band, that can be up towards £200 now. We're not as bad as Broadway, but we are seeing a rise in price. I do think something that conversation ignores sometimes is ticket bans and ticket pricing as a whole, because I won't be mad at a show for having £300 tickets at their most expensive band, at premium, if they're giving a table and food and drinks and access to a special room. If you're also having £20 tickets, £15 tickets, or even accessibility schemes, if you have a rush, if you have tickets for under 30s, if you have special tickets for key workers and people on benefits. Like, I think there is more to this conversation when it comes to accessibility and pricing. But I would say on the whole, theatre is expensive. And it's not even just ticket pricing, it's also getting to London. Not everyone lives in London. I don't. And with rail fare getting more expensive, with travel being a really difficult thing to do, with some people not being able to get back home immediately, so having to plan longer trips, having to book hotels, having to get food there, prices keep on going up and up and up. And as you realise more and more how much you have to spend when you're going to London, it's not just that ticket price for a lot of people, it's also this, and this, and this, rail, food, where you're staying. Which means getting to London for a lot of people and buying theatre tickets just sadly isn't an option. And I think West End Live is a good solution to this. Because yes, not a lot of people will be able to afford travel to London. Not a lot of people will be able to afford all of it together and seeing 1,000,001 shows, but people might be able to come down for one day. People might be able to come down from 11 till 5 to watch a bunch of West End musicals perform for one day because there's no ticket price attached to that. And even if you can't, West End Live films all of these performances. West End Live will post these online, so if you do miss a day, if you decide to go on a Saturday and not a Sunday, or if you can't go to West End Live one year, you still get to enjoy all of these performances. It's also great for number 2, the producers. Theatre is struggling more and more and more under the weight of a lot of different issues in the UK, whether that be government financing, whether that be just getting the word of mouth out, and West End Live is a good way to advertise a lot of these shows, especially new shows. The amount of times I've been introduced to a show at West End Live is very high. There's a lot of people who get their first taste of a show at West End Live. There's a lot of people who may be introduced to something that they wouldn't have gone to see, but will now prioritise because they had a great West End Live performance. That is great marketing potential. Because, yes, not only are you going out to all of those people in Trafalgar Square, but you now also have content for your socials, because other channels can repost the West End Live content, and you're also advertising your show to so many more people who are watching online. It's not just the 20,000 people who can fit into Trafalgar Square, it's also everyone who follows their socials, everyone who's going to be introduced to it by algorithms. So yes, while you have these big heavy hitter shows that probably don't need to do West End Live, like a Hamilton, like Six, like Hercules or Mamma Mia, you get to have extra performances from them, but you also have these smaller shows who also get a chance to perform. Hell, let's look at the schedule for this year, and let's talk about new West End shows that are coming up to advertise themselves, and anything smaller. You have Just for One Day that's just opened. Hercules technically has just opened as well. You have Clueless, it's their first on West End Live. You have Brigadoon, which has been able to advertise itself. Sing Street as well, Coven. New musicals in venues that people maybe don't know about yet. There's Oscar at the Crown, there's the Bras, there's the Frogs, Ride the Cyclone, 101 Dalmatians, This Is My Family. Janie D's Beautiful World Cabaret, Lovestuck. It's not just these heavy hitter West End shows performing, that's probably what's bringing a lot of people in, but these other shows also get a chance to advertise themselves, to bring themselves to a wider demographic. That's fantastic. Because if you can get eyes onto a show, if you can give a good teaser of what your show is about, and get some more people talking about it, that could help them, especially in a time where theatre, and especially non-commercial theatre, is struggling more and more and more. I mean, I say that, but even when we're talking about commercial theatre, May was one of the hardest months for commercial theatre. There was a big dip in ticket sales as reported on the stage, and that is kind of cause for concern for our industry. Especially because a lot of the time, you do need the big shows to succeed for those producers to take chances on smaller shows. We wouldn't have things like Benjamin Button, or even hits like Six, in the West End if producers didn't take a shot at it, and didn't feel able to take a shot at it because they've had other successes in the past. We can say all of that, but we can also talk about the community of West End Live. Having a day to celebrate theatre allows a lot of people to come together. There's a lot of people who will gather for West End Live, a lot of friends who will come down for West End Live. I think it's a great moment for an industry to come together as well, and for fans to meet and enjoy things together. Especially because sometimes when you're watching a show itself, it doesn't really have that proper community feel. I think having events outside of theatre is such a great thing. And I think West End Live provides that in a great way. So as you can see, there's so many pros to West End Live. I think fundamentally, all of that makes it worth it. A free event, advertising all of these shows, being able to be a moment to see all of this theatre, to introduce yourself to new things, and to enjoy some performances from things you've seen before. To remind yourself about some of the theatre that is on. I mean, I've had shows perform at West End Live before, and I've went, oh yeah, that new cast came in, or oh yeah, ZZ Strandon is now in Wicked, I need to go see Wicked again. I haven't seen it in about 10 years. That's a very specific example about this West End Live. I do think fundamentally West End Live is a great idea. I do think fundamentally it works, and I do think fundamentally it is important that it happens. Even if we do have to take it with some of the cons it does come with, I do think that is worth it. But let's explore some of the common complaints about West End Live that I see every single year. And when I say every single year, every single year. Now, granted, I do think some of these complaints are justified, but do lack a little bit of context in places. So let's start with the first one. The first thing you'll encounter at West End Live, and that is the queue. West End Live starts at 11 AM. You are allowed into the venue at 10 AM on a Saturday. This all happens an hour later on a Sunday. And every year, we get the same videos of people arriving at about 8, 9 o'clock and realising that the queue stretches halfway across the West End. Trafalgar Square has a capacity of 20,000 people. You can see how many people that is lining up. And so every single year we see these same videos of the queue stretching along. I remember the year that I went to West End Live, and the queue when I arrived, it was about like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, stretched all the way to the Haymarket, like down that street. This year, there's videos of it stretching all the way to Leicester Square, going down like towards Chinatown, going round the corner. Like, it is a massive, massive queue. And yes, this does provide a lot of health and safety issues. And I think for a lot of people, that is very off-putting. I think the thing that upsets me the most about the West End Live queues is the way they kind of very negatively affects people who don't live in London. I've spoken a lot about why I think the price is great for this, especially because travel and food and getting to London and ticket prices are so expensive. So by having these giant queues, by having people who live in London being able to get to the event even sooner, makes it harder and harder for people outside of London to justify going, because the earliest they could get there, the queue is already so far, and there's not a guarantee that they'll be able to be let in. There is a capacity to the venue, meaning if they don't get there early, if they don't spend more money on a hotel to get there and camp from 1 AM, yes, there are people camping there from like 1, 2 AM in the morning, then they don't get to enjoy the one event where they can probably actually go to the theatre. It kind of makes a lot of that accessibility a bit null and void. But it's also a difficult thing to sort, because I don't think West End Live can be ticketed. I think adding a ticketing system to West End Live kind of ruins a lot about what makes it work. A lot of people like West End Live because it can be a little bit more off the cuff. It can be a little bit last minute. People can decide very quickly, on the day even, if they want to go to West End Live. I also think, from a case of how it's set up and the sponsors, because this is an event that is government funded, and funded by the City of London, which means it literally can't be a ticketed event. They cannot sell tickets for West End Live. They can't put a price on it. And if they lose that sponsorship, if they lose that connection to the government and to the City of London, then they don't get the venue. And then, if all of this happens to put that in place, point by point, it just becomes even less accessible for people, because there's going to need to be a price point, because more and more West End shows are going to drop out if they can't have it their way, if it can't benefit them as well. That's less and less eyes being able to be put onto it, and the second you ticket it, you're just having the exact same opposite issue. So if you put a ticketing system in place, the opposite happens, but the same people are negatively affected. It's the people outside of London. It's the people who can't access theatre as easily. It's the people who don't get to go see theatre. People want a good spot in West End Live. It's understandable that they do. But I do think it's a shame for everyone who doesn't live in London that people will go so early in the morning to queue up. But it's a difficult thing to stop, because how do you police that? How do you manage that? Do you tell people that they can't start queuing before a certain time? If you say that, then people just wait a little bit further out and then just start coming in when you eventually do open that queue. I mean, that's basically what they're doing anyway. The problem is West End Live is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's growing and growing and growing, and more people want to be able to enjoy West End Live. But what's not changing is the venue they're in, and there's a very clear reason for this, but let's first explore this con. There are outdoor venues where West End Live could be performed. A lot of people will point to something like Hyde Park and go, look, there's so much more space in this venue. If West End Live is growing, it needs to go somewhere where it can perform to a bigger crowd. And yes, on paper, that makes a lot of sense, because if we can't fit everyone who wants to come to West End Live into the space, then it is a bit of a shame for people who come all the way and don't get a space, or people who want to enjoy it but can't. But that forgets something very important about West End Live, and it's the days it performs. West End Live happens on a Saturday and a Sunday every year. A lot of shows perform on those days. Hell, a lot of shows will perform on a day where they do have performances, so they can do West End Live and then go do their matinee. There's not a lot of space backstage at West End Live, so a lot of shows will go to the theatre, get changed there, and then walk. So, think about that for 1 second. If these shows can't go to their theatres and walk to West End Live, how are they going to get to West End Live? You would need a much bigger backstage space. You would need a lot more facilities, and that costs money. And for a free event, that might be money they can't spend. If, for instance, we moved West End Live to Hyde Park, I would see it a very likely possibility that a lot more shows would not perform, because it's not easy for them to get to Hyde Park. It's not easy for them to just send the performers walking from the Sondheim, or literally, what's a theatre around the corner? I mean, from Phantom, from His Majesty Theatre, to the venue. I mean, even theatres that are a little bit further out are still in a decent enough walking distance to West End Live to perform. Victoria is not too far. And it's a close enough distance where if you did get like a coach for your team, if you did get a coach for your performers, then it could happen without getting stuck in London traffic. If we move West End Live out of Trafalgar Square, West End Live would fundamentally change. And then without the big heavy hitter shows that might not see it worth it anymore to do West End Live, then less people might turn up for West End Live. And if less people turn up for West End Live, then you don't need to move West End Live. And so you can see the issue here of if you do move it, then it's not worth moving it. And then there's the other issue of the fact that they literally can't change venues, because the venue they have is what they're given by the City of London. That sponsorship is what gives them Trafalgar Square. West End Live is not the only thing that performs on that stage during the summer. They do loads there. You know what? Let me see very quickly if I can find out what else performs there. I have my handy dandy PC here, slightly off camera. Let's have a look. So Trafalgar Square concerts. I mean, literally the first thing I've seen is BMW Classics, the London Symphony Orchestra, the LSO. They will literally do an event at Trafalgar Square. Very similar one. They did it last weekend. They did it on Saturday the 15th. This is provided by that sponsorship. And if you go somewhere else and you lose that sponsorship, how are you funding West End Live? You would then have to fund it through ticket sales. And now you've put a price on West End Live, which ruins accessibility. It's this domino effect. The way that West End Live is set up is just in a case where some of these issues can't be addressed in many ways. But even in a world where it could happen, if they could move it to Hyde Park, the additional costs on producers to get the cast to somewhere like Hyde Park would likely mean that they wouldn't want to do it. This doesn't mean shows can't do that. This doesn't mean shows can never do that, because we see a lot of West End shows will perform at outdoor events, at festivals. We've seen Six, Wicked, all of these shows do stuff like that. We've seen shows perform at Pride. But West End Live is a very different kettle of fish to a lot of those. And the reason that it attracts so many West End shows is because of a lot of these factors, because of the location, because of the price of it. The benefits of West End Live for them right now outweigh a lot of the cons. These two issues, I've spoken about them back to back because they're the two main ones that a lot of people cite, and then the main two that they can't really do much about. I would love to see them be able to make it better, because I will say, like, I have not been to West End Live in a couple of years. And the reason I haven't been for so long is because, well, I don't live in London. I could stay at a friend's and go up the day before and camp out like a lot of other people do, but that's a lot to ask for, and especially in the heat. This is one of the hottest weekends of the year, and that is something that's put me off going to West End Live, because I don't know if I can stand outside, stand up for an entire day in that extreme heat. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get in, because by the time I can get to London, I mean, I'm lucky in a lot of places that I wouldn't have to leave as early as someone who lives up north, but still, I've still got to get to the location. I don't know how far back that queue is, so I've got to start, like, at Trafalgar Square and make my way back to the back of the queue. So there's a lot of issues here that just sadly can't be massively addressed. But one thing that can be addressed in many places is West End Live's actual accessibility. Now, I'm someone who is able-bodied. I'm someone who doesn't have any disabilities. I'm not someone who's going to be affected by this. And so I didn't want to be the only voice on this matter, so I reached out to multiple friends. Through this section, I'm going to be having a first-hand perspective from Lydia. Lydia is someone who went through the access queue at West End Live this year, and we have a perspective from Rachel. Rachel is an access coordinator who can deliver some strong feedback to West End Live, some areas where they can improve in regards to accessibility. Let's start with a change they made this year, which West End Live goers didn't really love too much, was how they managed their accessible seating. At West End Live, there are 100 accessible seats. This is an accessible platform at the back of the venue. If you are disabled, if you are a wheelchair user, this is your only step-free access to the entire venue. If you want to go see West End Live, this is the only way that you can do it without having to go down steps. Now, accessibility is a lot more than just wheelchair users. Accessibility might be people who use walking canes. Accessibility might be people who are neurodivergent. Access might be people who have harder hearing and need to be closer to the stage or closer to a speaker. I think a lot of people hear access and disability and immediately go to a wheelchair user. But accessibility is a very wide thing. A lot of people have disabilities. In the words of my friend Rachel, a ballot system was negatively received because it removes a lot of agency from disabled people.
It removed disabled attendees' ability to make last-minute choices, as many West End Live goers would have. If we were chosen by the ballot at all, we were allocated which day to attend before the schedule had even been announced, removing even more choice in a world where disabled people have very little anyway.
Able-bodied people get to be a little bit more spontaneous with West End Live. They can decide on the day whether they want to go or not. Disabled people deserve to be able to have that kind of choice as well, deserve that kind of agency, deserve the spontaneity. And by making this system a ballot, it kind of removed a lot of that. Some of this could be helped with more disabled seating options.
The biggest issue I feel is the size of the access platform. The platform is a roped-off area with step-free access for people with access needs to have space, seating, and not be a part of the main crowd. The issue here is that the rest of Trafalgar Square does not have step-free access, so that need is only solved by the access platform. Trafalgar Square has a capacity of 20,000 people, and the access platform in the past years has been able to accommodate less than 100. This is a huge barrier to disabled people attending the event. A second roped-off access area down by the stage would really help to increase the number of people with access needs that could attend the event.
Rachel did also highlight a positive, which is their use of the company MobileLoo. This company bring accessible toilets to events like West End Live. Here are some of the other areas where Rachel highlighted some of the improvements that could be made for accessibility for West End Live.
The lack of shade is another big problem. Many people with disabilities are significantly more affected by the weather than others. Personally, the heat was what stopped me from attending this year. When they managed to provide shaded bleacher seating for the VIP area for performers at the back, this does suggest that this would be something that's possible to implement.
And on the other hand, let's turn to Lydia. Lydia is someone who attended West End Live yesterday, and her friend was wearing a sunflower lanyard. There were stewards and staff going up and down the queue looking for people wearing lanyards like this to move them from that queue to the accessible queue. The accessible queue at West End Live this year was split into two. A queue for people going onto the platform, which was ticketed, and a queue for people going into the main crowd. This is something else that West End Live could probably improve on, and it's their communication. A lot of people didn't even know that there were two separate queues.
I wasn't aware pre-West End Live that there was going to be two different access queues, both next to each other. So better communication surrounding that pre-event would have been really helpful, because then we would have just gone to the access queue from the off if we'd known that that was available to us.
There's probably a lot of people with disabilities who didn't go to West End Live this year because they thought they wouldn't be able to go for an accessible queue, and turns out they could have. This communication is very important for disabled people, as they have to think about a lot more things to go to an event than able-bodied people do. But I'll let Lydia speak herself about some of the positives and the critiques that she had about her experience going to West End Live this year, going through the access queue.
They could have snaked the access queue in a slightly different direction as to allow for more shade areas, because a lot of the access queue was in direct sunlight, which is not great. Also, it kind of went across a public footpath almost, where like the general London public were cutting across this queue all the time, so it did make it quite overwhelming in one section of the queue. So just in snaking it in a different direction round the corner down Trafalgar Square, so you could see Trafalgar Square rather than snaking it upwards towards St Martin's Lane, I think that would have worked better, because it would have been in more shade and you could queue against the wall, so you're not having the general public go across. Positives is that there were so many stewards on hand to help with answering questions. One actually came around every friendship group / person in the queue and gave everybody individually a map and pointed out where the calm area was, and just assured us that if we had any issues we could go and find someone in a green or orange high-vis and they'd be able to help us. So I found that really helpful.
Accessibility is something that is coming more and more to the forefront of people's minds in theatre, and I'm hoping that more and more things can be put into place so that disabled people can be listened to, and so that year after year we can slowly improve the accessibility for people at West End Live. It's a difficult task and there's a lot to think about, but it's not impossible. Next, let's talk about performances, because this is something that I've actually only noticed this year. Because yes, West End Live is a great place to advertise your show, but it's also quite terrifying for the stars of the shows. There was a TikTok posted this year by Amber Davies. Amber Davies has previously done West End Live with many different shows, and this year she's doing it with The Great Gatsby. Here is that TikTok.
Okay, let's discuss this comment. So, firstly, I just want to say I think West End Live's amazing. I think the whole day is like so special. The fact that all the West End shows get to perform on one stage in one day, like, I love it. It's not necessarily a bad venue, but it's big open space, and we do get a sound check. Every single show gets a sound check, but of course when you do the sound check, you're doing it to an empty Trafalgar Square, and the sound completely changes once you've got all of the audience in, and it's a lot of people. Number 2, I'm just going to use as an example, the West End Live stage is probably the same as like a small stage at a festival. You know, you got like the main stage and then smaller stages, probably equivalent to like a small stage, I think. And an artist will have an in-ear where they'll have their vocals in their ear, they'll have their band in their ear, they'll have, you know, the right combo to kind of give the best performance. Obviously, a lot of West End shows don't have that, so you kind of just trust in either your muscle memory, because, you know, sometimes you can't hear yourself or you can't hear the backing track, and you kind of, anything can actually happen. Although the sound today was actually great. The third thing for me is West End shows that are, you know, we do 8 shows a week. You get so used to singing your particular songs and score in a certain venue, like for us it's the Coliseum, with certain oomph behind the mic, and you've got a certain amount of band that you can consistently can sing at 8 shows a week. If you take your song and just plonk it into a different space, I swear to God, it feels so different. It feels different to sing. You have to like change your vowels up. What I would say though, when you do West End Live, if you're holding a handheld, it's actually not too bad. But it's these ones that it's petrifying. But today was actually great. It was so good. Like, I've watched it back on YouTube. Like, it's not the best thing since sliced bread, but I enjoyed it.
As you can see from her thoughts there, West End Live is a notoriously difficult venue to perform at. There can be many sound issues, there can be things cutting out, it's hot. I mean, they made the Operation Mincemeat cast perform in coats this year. I don't know who decided to do that, but they did not think that one through. That poor cast. Oh lord, I would have been dying. But also, because they don't really have in-ear headsets, because they can't hear the loop back amazingly well, it has resulted in past years where performances haven't gone exactly to plan. I think a key example of this is actually Cinderella, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella, where Carrie struggled to perform that number because of some issues with the sound system. So yes, while West End Live can be a great venue to show off your show to a new audience, and where most of the shows do go right and perform well, it can lead to some difficulties, and it can lead to some areas where sound cuts out or things go wrong, as it always can with live theatre. But because it's being filmed, because it's under a microscope, these issues can be seen even stronger. It can lead to a lot of people saying negative things about the show, or even going as far to say negative things about the performers, which is honestly really sad to see. And finally, I don't want to place this into pros or cons, because I don't think it's really either. I want to speak about the difference between Saturday and Sunday, because if I ever go to West End Live, it's gonna be the Sunday. The Sunday is 10 times better, and the reason why? It's so much quieter. I went to West End Live one year. I went as the performances started. So I arrived to the venue on a Sunday at 12. This is the last time I went to West End Live, which I think, if I remember, was 2023. Heathers was performing first. I arrived halfway through them doing 17, and I went in immediately. I walked straight through during their first performance of the day. Basically, this is me saying, if you want to go to West End Live, consider going on the Sunday. That's what I've done in the past, and it's worked for me. So, and even on those days, the venue wasn't completely full. There was still a lot of space. I was more towards the back, yes, but I still had a good view, especially because of the screens and everything. I was living my best life. I was loving it. So, we come to the main question of this video: is West End Live broken? I think there's definitely criticism that you can levy to West End Live, but I think the more you think about it and the more you look into the things where it does kind of falter, there's a lot they really can't do about it. I always want to be fair with a criticism, and that's why if I was going to make this video, I wanted to platform both sides of it. I want to speak about these common things and these common things that people moan about every single year, but also kind of illustrate why it's like this, why it has to be set up like this, otherwise West End Live just simply wouldn't be an event that happens. We know they're actively looking into areas to improve certain things, but at the heart of it, I think West End Live is important. I think it's a great event for people to be introduced to new shows. I think it's an amazing event to get these fantastic clips of new performances. It's a great tool for theatre, a great moment for theatre fans to be reunited again. And I do think on the whole that outweighs a lot of the cons. But what do you think? Did you go to West End Live this year? How was your experience? What do you think of some of these areas where West End Live could possibly improve in the future? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now and a link to my Instagram you'd like to join me and follow over there. I also have other social links and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!